Welcome to Retail Leasing Series 1, the first in a series of 4, and we have 4 topics that we're going to discuss in this series. Retail Leases 101 will be about the lease and the basics. Retail Leases 102 will be the numbers and the lease economics. Retail Leases 103, research is mandatory, and we'll talk about how to research your business and your lease and your landlord. And Retail Leasing 104, the critical path, talking about the timeline and putting time as a friend, not an enemy, within your lease. Retail Leases 101, the lease. The learning objectives for this session will give you a basic understanding of the lease elements, the makeup of a lease contract, common terms used in leases, how you and other parties relate to each other, your interaction and influence over the lease, and where you can access more information on retail leases and your lease. What is a lease? Put simply, it's a contract whereby possession and use of land or property is transferred for a limited period in return for a consideration, which we all know as rent, and under certain specified conditions. The key words there we underlined were contract. A lease is a legal contract and binds both parties into a contractual arrangement as to how they will deal with each other in relationship of the exchange of land for consideration being rent. The other one that's very important and often overlooked is permitted use, the use of the land, how you will use the land. The lease will specify what you can sell, what products you can market, how will you use the land, whether you have storage areas, whether you have access to licensed areas, how you egress and access the premises as well. Next one's very critical, it's period. A lease commences and a lease expires. You're effectively only leasing time rather than actual land. So the critical path and certainly the period needs to be understood. The next one, of course, is rent, which we all concentrate on because that's the actual dollars that you spend from your business in acquiring that premises to conduct the business. And the last one is conditions. Retail shop leases are highly complex, and there's certain terms and conditions throughout a lease that will tell you how each party will conduct themselves, how they will talk to each other, how they'll communicate with each other, certainly what will happen each year with rental increases and those types of things. So the special conditions or conditions and terms within a lease are vital as well. Obviously there's different types of leases. In our lifetime we see residential leases obviously, commercial leases for industrial warehouse type leases, office leases of course. Then there's retail leases and retail shop leases, and they can come in many shapes and sizes. Certainly each landlord has their own lawyers who will draw up their own draft leases. Certainly each state and territory has different lease legislation. And there's different types of retail leases. As we can see on the screen, we've got head lease, where the landlord may take a head lease off a government department, for instance, and then sublease to you as the sublessee. We've got gross leases, which dictate how the rental will be described, and a net lease, once again, which will talk about base rent and outgoings. Then we've got a combination of those, being a semi-gross lease. Then we have periodic or holdover leases, where they're for short terms or different types of environments or when a lease expires, etc. And within a lease, obviously, there's different terms and common terms that you're going to use from time to time. There's some of the terms we've put on the screen there, and just to run through those, we've got assign or assignment. This will be where you actually purchase a business under a current lease, where the lease will be assigned to you as the assignee. You will see in different states and territories the disclosure statement, and this will be a document prior to entering the lease that the landlord will exchange with you, which will set out the terms and conditions of that specific lease. You'll see fit out, which is about how you will fit the premises out, such as the shop front, the ceiling, the flooring, etc. Then you've got fittings, which are your fittings, your gondolas, your shelving, your counters, etc. You'll see goodwill, and in this modern day with leases, goodwill usually reflects the length and the terms of your lease. We've put in here key money. Now, key money's been outlawed since the introduction of retail shop leases legislation around 1994, but it's important that we see it in here so that you understand that key money's been outlawed for some time. You'll be referred to as lessee within a lease normally, and the landlord would be referred to, or the property owner will be referred to as a lessor. You may see clauses like make good, which determine at the end of the lease how you will present the premises back to the landlord after you've finished occupying it. We've included options here because they're very vital, because that's your right, your future right and further right over someone else's land, and the lease will specify how you are to exercise and notify the landlord in relation to that option. Remember, again, it's your right over someone else's land, and it's a very important clause in options. Outgoings, we've included that here because outgoings specifies the operating expenses and the costs to the building and to the landlord of operating the property, shopping centre or complex that you're in. And most retail disputes centre around outgoings and how they're apportioned. We've included here ratchet clauses. Once again, much like key money, in 1994, when retail shop lease legislation was being introduced around the country, ratchet clauses, which prevented the rental from going backwards at certain events like market rent reviews, were outlawed completely. So we need to keep that in there so you identify those and make sure that doesn't happen to you. Relocation, very important clauses there, which can set out how your business can be interrupted during the term of your lease. We've also got security bond and security deposit. Quite often that's transferred to what's called a bank guarantee. Then we've got turnover rent. Quite often this is misunderstood as percentage rent, and we go into that in some depth in session 102 in the next one. But to give you more guidance as to some of the terms and definitions that the property industry use, the Shopping Centre Council of Australia, they put out a glossary of terms, which is 147 pages of a dictionary just for specifically on retail property issues and retail leasing. Who are the people involved in your lease? Well, obviously there's you, the lessee, and then there's the owner, the lessor, or you might call them the landlord, but there's certainly others involved as well. You may be in a franchise system, or you may be using a brand. You might have solicitors, obviously. You'll have your accountants. There may be centre managers and property managers. There may be leasing executives or leasing agents who work on behalf of the landlord. Then there's consultants, there's architects, designers, obviously shop fitters and builders, your financiers and banks, and the government. In each state and territory, there is specific retail shop lease, tenancy or commercial lease legislation specific to your state and territory, and you should understand what they are. How and when can I influence my lease? From the first day the lease commences, the clock is ticking down to the end or expiry of the term, and as the actions and behaviour you as lessee reflects during the term that will influence the outcomes when the lease expires. You need to put time on your side. Do not let the clock wind down, as you only end up leveraging the landlord. Where can you get more information about your lease? Well, certainly each state and territory has specific retail shop lease or tenancy or commercial tenancy legislation, and going through all this could be quite daunting. Some of the states actually have handbooks, which are a short version guide to assist you in your retail shop lease. Another great booklet is a booklet put out by the Department of Innovation from the federal government called Look Before You Lease, titled Avoiding the Pitfalls in Retail Leasing. This booklet will certainly give you some questions and answers and a survey that you need to fill out as you're entering into a new lease. For first timers it's fantastic. For people who are entering to their second or third lease, it has a lot of helpful information in there as well. And certainly we recommend that you go forward and get a copy of Look Before You Lease. Where you can access more information, certainly copies of all the retail lease legislation from your state or territory, a copy of the Look Before You Lease booklet and the latest CPI results are available from our website at www.lease1.com.au. Just click on Leasing Links. Further, we've got in there our top 10 leasing tips. Just click the download the free report. We've collated frequently asked questions from clients over the years. Just click on FAQ. And certainly for the latest topics and discussions, go to our blog. But if you've got a specific question or need more information or assistance, contact us and our office will be back to you in due course. Remember, although you might be renting space, in fact, you're actually only renting time.